Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission for Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. I'd like to open the meeting at 7:30. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Carpenter?
Here.
Mr. Fitzer?
Here.
Mr. Colber?
Here.
Mr. Kucera?
Here.
Mr. Nushai?
Here.
Ms. Redmond? Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Solomon? And Mr. Tinlin.
So we do have a quorum tonight. Agenda item number 4 is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes they'd like to make in tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will approve the agenda as is. And we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is approval of the regular meeting minutes from our June 11th, 2024 meeting, our last meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 11, 2024.
Support.
Motion and support. Anybody have any changes or corrections? Seeing none, can I have roll call on that, please?
Mr. Colber?
Yes.
Mr. Kucera?
Yes.
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is a public discussion for items that are not on the agenda. Anyone from the public wishing to opine? Seeing none, I will then close public discussion. We'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is a public hearing and consideration of a request for rezoning of 533 South Main Street to be rezoned from Business Renewal District 1, BRD 1, to Central Mixed Use, CMD zoning district. And I think our planner will help us through this.
All right, good evening, Planning Commission. I'm happy to just present the staff report real quick. It was in your packet. This is a rezoning, so it means that there's an applicant, Mr. Ferlito, right? Is applying to change the zoning map, to change the zoning designation of the district, which is currently, or of the property, which is currently zoned BRD 1 for the Business Renewal District, and they are looking to rezone it to CMD, the Central Mixed Use. So that being said, when we review rezonings, one of the key considerations is compliance and adherence to the master plan's future land use plan and that description. So we want to point you to the fact that the area on the future land use map is designated Mixed Use 1, which has a summary as follows in the staff report. I'm not going to read that paragraph, but really what Mixed Use 1 is looking for is a little bit more of a extension of the downtown character a little bit more mixed use, a little bit more concentration of multifamily or various housing uses in conjunction with storefronts and businesses and commercial properties as well. So a couple key little sentences I'd like to point out. The one sentence that says, likewise, the incorporation of multiple family residential uses along the corridor will help generate additional demand for shopping and dining. A mixed-use commercial district along 14 Mile Road and South Main Street is intended to allow for additional businesses to serve the community while also provide alternative housing options. Increasing the variety of housing near the downtown will tend to attract those who choose to live in a bustling community without the maintenance required from living in a single-family detached structure. So that being said, we then look at a little bit how the proposed, actually I'm going to just kind of go to the items to consider for the zoning map amendment. I'll get to the nuts and bolts of the zoning districts in a minute. But we have 10 criteria here that we've listed. And when I say we, this is a criteria that's been established by Giffords Webster as kind of a best practice, generally accepted rezoning criteria. We use this when the ordinance is silent on how to handle a rezoning, so that's why we gave you this criteria. A couple key points is that alignment with the master plan. You always want a rezoning to align with the master plan. That's your baseline document to guide you. There's a couple interesting points. So point number 3 really speaks to the fact that the applicant is just looking to attain conformity with the zoning ordinance. Right now, the zoning ordinance in BRD1 makes this a non-conforming use, which obviously has a little bit of issues to, as an applicant or as a property owner, you generally don't want your property to be a non-conforming use. You're usually burdened by the standards in the non-conforming use section that does prohibit or does put constraints in the ability to rebuild or reconstruct in the event of disaster and whatnot. The other point I want to bring up is the fact that one of the criteria, number 8, says that is this the best way to address the land use and obtain a permitted use? Hypothetically, you could amend BRD1 to include housing to kind of match that master plan mixed use 1 designation a bit more. However, an interesting factor here is that this is actually the only non-conforming use, multifamily use in the BRD1 district. So essentially, if you rezone this to be BRD1, or if you rezoned applied a text amendment to BRD1 to permit housing, you would actually be kind of changing the character of the whole BRD1 zone rather than just this property. You would change the designation for a ton of properties on what's permitted there. That's why from a perspective of kind of how the whole development patterns of the city are affected, I think the zone to the CMD of this particular property is a little bit more fitting with just the character of the corridor. Going to go actually reverse back to the proposed zoning versus current zoning standards. So we just provided a chart on how dimensionally this will compare the setbacks and the max height and whatnot. The BRD1 and CMD actually have a lot of consistencies in terms of setbacks. Generally, the one biggest thing here is that there would now be a maximum setback of 25 feet in the CMD zone. So that actually would put the structure as a non-conforming structure. However, it's from preliminary conversations with the applicant, it seems a lot more preferred to have a non-conforming structure that you could deal with the 10 feet there in terms of reconstruction someday, rather than the fact that right now the use is banned altogether in that zone. So there's a little bit of a trade-off, but it does make more sense as a property owner to rather reckon with a non-conforming structure if that time comes, than try to reckon with the fact that your property's use is non-conforming. That's a little bit bigger of a hurdle to have to jump over. Height stays consistent in either district, so that would not change through the rezoning to CMD. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We did also have a use comparison that compares the BRD1 district to the CMD district in terms of permitted uses. So Again, happy to answer any questions about this rezoning request. A couple things I guess to point out too is that if you are looking to recommend to council the adoption of the rezoning, because council's obviously the final call here with the rezoning, it's an amendment to the ordinance. You should find in your motion that it meets the criteria outlined in the staff report. If you are looking to recommend a denial to council, it would still go to council with a recommendation, and you would want to make sure you're citing the criteria on why it does not only what criteria it doesn't meet, but why it does not meet that criteria. I think that's it. for
We
the
have
most
to
part.
sign it in the motion, is that?
You would want to, yeah, you would have to cite that in the motion.
You have to attach that to you.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Okay, this is a public hearing requesting just a rezone. This is not a site plan approval, right?
not a site plan
Even though all
approval.
the paperwork has a lot of drawings
Yep.
and blueprints and
Right.
plans, so all we're doing now is just gonna change the zoning.
Yeah, you're just changing the zoning. I believe the only information submitted by the applicant wasn't a site plan, though. I believe it was just a land survey.
Yeah, a lot of drawings
Yep.
and sketches and plans and such like that. How long has the existing apartment been there? Do we have any idea? It's been there
Question for Nick,
since
probably.
I can
but
remember it
it's-
has, so,
Looks 50s or 60s style for sure.
yeah.
I don't know I don't have the exact date that it was built, but it's certainly been there for a long time. You can tell the building style is not something that would have been constructed recently, but
Yeah, I drove by it this afternoon. It's kind of unique. It looks like you have to walk up a flight before you get into the ground floor.
yeah, I would agree.
So it's raised, so,
What's the proposed zoning for this area? What is it?
The central mixed use, CMD. Yep.
No, what's the future or
The future land use
Yeah, the future
designation in the
land-
master plan?
Yeah.
Mixed use one.
would this classification that he's requesting, would that be sufficient for what he's trying to do?
I mean, mixed use one speaks about having residential options and housing choices, and right now BRD one doesn't even permit any housing, so.
Right.
It would move towards that in terms of the description.
When is that the proposed master plan supposed to go into effect?
Well, we have to talk about that 2018 one, just because that's the one
Yeah, just-
on the books, but the proposed one depends on planning commission and council's review, right? I mean, the timeline is,
Yeah, I think Giffords Webster is nearing the end of like getting the draft master plan ready, and we'll probably be presenting that sometime in July or August at the latest. And at that point, planning commission would potentially review it or provide modifications or requests. If they approve it, it goes to council, and then in between there's 45 or 60-day noticing.
63 days, yep.
Yeah, 63-day noticing period. So, we're looking to the fall at that point.
September, October?
Yeah.
Okay.
so this must have been listed as BRD one for quite some time if the apartments are there. If it was BRD one before they built the apartments, they wouldn't be allowed under that, right?
it was probably
So
something.
somehow the apartments got stuck in there, and then the zoning got changed. to
I would
BRD.
assume the zoning was changed to BRD one while
Yep.
these were in existence.
No idea
Yep.
when that was done or why that was done.
So
Don't know.
if the proposed master plan takes into effect as is, and we do approve the CMD central mixed use, would the CMD mixed use, would it be grandfathered and stay CMD mixed use, or would it convert to the proposed?
No, that just depends on how the planning commission and city council want to implement anything from that proposed master plan. So as of now, let's say the master plan is adopted, it would stay CMD into the indefinite future if it is rezoned to CMD by planning commission and council, let's say in August or whatever this time frame would play out. Their planning commission is not, it's recommended to follow up on your master plan, but planning commissions and city councils don't always change all of the zoning to perfectly align with that future land use plan right away. Sometimes it takes time. you wouldn't need to be compelled to try to change the zoning immediately again on it if the master plan changes something. The master plan is always just the guiding document that backs the zoning ordinance. For example, there's even a few scenarios it looks like in the 2018 master plan that never fully played out. So it looks like there was a little bit more mixed use 1 and mixed use 2 throughout different corridors in the 2018 master plan that were not subsequently rezoned to something of the mixed use nature. So,
If I may add to Mr. Carpenter's logic, so if we change it to CMD and we do approve, we and council does approve the amendments of the master plan,
Yep.
then this property will be in nonconformity again.
no, it doesn't. It just depends on what the zoning would end up being as part of your. So the change, so a new master plan does not require new zoning. So it would stay CMD even though you get a new master plan. But if you did want to rezone a stretch of properties, again, for whatever reason, because of the master plan, potentially it could make something non-conforming, but I don't know if it's in the master plan's crystal ball, the draft master plan's crystal ball, to make residential uses non-conforming on your main corridors.
So as it stands now, the apartments that are there are non-conforming
Correct.
under
Under right now, BRD
BRD1.
one.
the BRD1. And if you bought those and tore them down, you could not put an apartment there.
Correct.
Because now, if we change it to central mixed, that allows
To go
tear
up.
down of that and put a new building in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And that's all we're seeking a motion on tonight is.
Correct. I don't want to let the future master plan distract anything going on here because we are yet to totally formulate those goals and objectives and future land uses.
Any further questions for Andy?
Yeah, I did. I noticed on the application itself, under proposed use of property, and that's question number 2 or item number 2, and then proposed buildings to be constructed. So number 2 says proposed use of property, multifamily development with parking at ground level and dwelling units above. Number 3 says proposed buildings to be constructed if applicable, 3-story building proposed as well as improvements to the existing site, including off-street parking. So if we were to grant this zoning change, those items are kind of immaterial. Those detailed descriptions are kind of immaterial because the applicant would have to come back to us, right? With
Correct.
another proposal
Yep.
if they actually wanted to make some kind of change along those lines,
Correct. Yep, you would still review a site plan. Right now, there's not a site plan tied to this rezoning or anything like that. So you wouldn't be approving any kind of development concept or anything of that nature. Just what would be allowed in CMD, generally.
Not at this point, but it will come back to us.
I would imagine, so that's actually a good point, because in maybe a question to ask the applicant about what the future goal is of the property. Because we can't foresee what an applicant wants to do either, so.
Any other
From a staff
questions?
perspective.
More questions for Andy?
If we change this to a CMD, so these requests that the applicant has, they become by right. Am I correct?
Yeah, so uses would be allowed by right on that use comparison
So
at the
he
end of the
will-
memo.
He or she would come to us with a plan, but practically they will be by right.
Correct, but you would be able to only scrutinize the uses as they are presented as special land uses. But a permitted use, for
Right.
example, you would just be approving the plan and the dimensional aspects of the
Right.
plan. You wouldn't have any say on prohibiting any of those permitted uses.
So at this moment, a 2-story building cannot be put there because of BRD1.
Correct.
If we change it to CMD, yes.
Yep,
Okay.
and that's because BRD1 does not.
Permit any.
Yeah, you could put a 2-story non-residential building in
Sure.
BRD1, but it's because of the residential, they
Right.
can't build up right now in BRD1 either. So they're operating under their current footprint and current shell right now as a non-conforming use.
CMD doesn't allow 3-story either.
No, CMD just allows 2-story max, I believe. That's a good question for Nick too. Is it 2 stories? Yep. Okay.
Any more questions for Andy, or any questions for the applicant?
I'd be interested in hearing the applicant describe what their intent is.
Could you please come to the microphone and tell us who you are and what your plans are?
How you guys doing?
Good.
My name is Michael Ferlito. Thank you for the time to hear about our application. So we have zero plans to do what the application said. We thought when we bought the building before that we were gonna knock it down and go vertical, but it's just, we're incapable of doing that with the current zoning and where interest rates are, construction costs. So we are planning to renovate units. You can see we already started doing some outside work. We took down some trees, power washed the exterior, and just gonna dress it up. And that's what we're doing. The problem with the non-conforming use is our lenders and our insurance companies hate it. Because if something happens to that building, we can't rebuild it, there's problems, and our investors. So typically, we always go to rezone to a conforming use if it fits with the future master, or the future land use or master plan. But right now, with the way things are, there's just no way we can do anything there, even if we wanted to.
So it's going to stay the same, just much cleaned up and?
Yeah. We're gonna start renovating units and fix up the parking lot. We've been talking to our neighbors, and, we're gonna continue to invest in our tiny little block.
How many units are in that building?
11 or 12.
I drove by today, I couldn't tell by the mailboxes.
Apartments.com says 12 for some reason, but we're pretty sure there's 11 in there. So we're gonna keep cleaning it up and see what we can do with it, maybe 10 years down the road. But, even say we had every variance we needed and we got 3 stories, 4 stories, parking, and it's still impossible to build a building today. I'm a contractor. I build multifamily all over the place, and you just can't build these buildings today unless you're in downtown Birmingham. Just the costs are too expensive.
The renters that are currently there, you'd be working around them then? They stay there and you?
Some of them are opting to leave. I mean, they're paying $600 a month in rent. You can't find a building in some very, very distressed parts of Detroit that's still charging that rate. So the prior owners had the building for like 20 years, and I don't know, they never raised rents in 20 years, and it's probably why the building is so dilapidated, because he never put any capital, not upgrades, but just capital maintenance. So it's all deferred maintenance. So, we took a bank loan out to buy and to invest in the property. So we're just going to continue to do that until we're done.
Good, I'm in favor of cleaning it up and making it look better. Does anybody else have any questions, or otherwise I'd entertain a motion? So, somebody's got to make a motion, and I don't have my.
You do need to open a public hearing.
Oh, that's right,
first.
yes.
So just as a reminder.
I forgot about that, yes. This is a public hearing, so I will now open it for public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to discuss this? I assume that residents next door would not necessarily be notified about this, would they? About just a zoning change?
So, just like it would be for a special land use, there's a public notice sent out to every property within 300 feet of
300
the site,
feet.
Which was sent out. There was one resident that stopped by and asked for the rezoning application, shared that with her, and the information was on our website as well. We also did not receive any written comments.
Okay, good. So we don't have any complaints, and we don't have any public here tonight, so I will just close public comment and entertain a motion at this point. And I don't have a vice chair or a secretary who normally makes motions, so. Anyone want to take a stab at
I'll
it?
move that the proposed rezoning of 533 South Main Street from BRD1 to CMD be recommended to City Council for their approval.
If I may, I just wanted to remind you and make a finding that it meets the criteria as listed in the staff report. I think that's
Okay,
that's okay.
I have a motion, but I need support on that first. We have support? We have motion and support.
I got support.
Got it?
Yes.
And on your motion to accept it, you're going to add the
Yeah, the language that he mentioned. that
necessary
it-
verbiage.
I have a motion, as long as, are you're comfortable with
Yeah,
that?
I'm good with it.
Okay, and yours as well, okay.
So we're good. Okay, can I have roll call, please?
Chair Kucera,
Yes.
Mr. Nushai,
No.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
No.
Mr. Fitzer,
Yes.
Mr. Colburn.
Yes.
Motion passes, right? Welcome to Clausen again. Move on to agenda item number 8, which is other business. Do we have anything under other business?
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Do we have any more information, or maybe you were going to bring this up already, Nick, on the joint meeting we were going to have to talk about the short-term rental units?
I was going to touch on that during the staff report, but I can certainly answer that question now. Right now, we don't have anything scheduled. We're still working on getting some preliminary information as we want to make sure we're presenting everything to both council and planning commission. Probably looking sometime in July. I know that's relatively open, but that's our timeline right now, more than likely. And we'll certainly be sharing more information as time goes on.
That's what's holding up the joint, that we don't have enough information for it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's what's holding up the joint meeting, is that we don't have enough information?
We're getting some more information on short-term rentals. Mr. Nushai is out of town, and so he's, as our attorney, is obviously very critical in discussing ordinance amendments, and so there's a couple items that we want to make sure we have checked off before we bring everyone together. The last thing we want to do is have all 9 of you and 5 members from council and not be able to achieve what we're looking for.
Okay. All right, yeah, 'cause I was going to ask that question later, too. Anything else under other business?
Yes, I would like to inform you, Mr. Chair, and the board that I'm leaving the country in a couple weeks, and I'll be missing a few meetings in a row, so
Oh,
some family matters that I have.
okay.
I don't know if that's any business, but but nonetheless, I wanted to inform yourself and the board.
So you'll miss the next meeting or two,
At least 2 or 3, at least 3, but 2 for sure.
or how long are you going away?
I'm sorry?
How long are you going to be gone?
A month.
Oh.
So a month and some change, so.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. How about a planner's report?
Nothing new for me. I think we'll be discussing the master plan at some upcoming planning commission meetings, so.
Okay. Staff report and training opportunities.
All right, thank you, Chair Kucera. The staff report was included in your packet with a few modifications and updates. Specifically, everyone on the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, membership has been renewed for the Michigan Association of Planning for July 1st, 2024 through next June, 2025. Additionally, I wanted to just touch on 2 things and share my screen momentarily. So also in the packet was a draft rendering of the potential public hearing sign that we discussed last year. So we had Brandon Birch, our communications specialist, draft that up, and I'm pulling it up on the screen for everyone to take a look at if you haven't had a chance
I
to.
assume they'll be larger than 8.5 by 11, right?
Certainly, but just wanted to have a rendering for everyone to get an idea of what we're looking for.
Yeah. 2 color?
Yes, it is in color. I'm pulling up my screen here. I hope it comes through. Yeah, so this is what it would look like for the planning commission, and obviously it would be to scale. But the main items we want to touch on is identifying that the property will be subject to a public hearing for whichever body it is, whether planning commission or zoning board of appeals. We have the a QR code and also a URL for residents to access if they're walking by, driving by, and want to find out more information. And then, of course, the phone number to the department if they would like to get a physical copy of the plans. So we feel that provides all the information to the public that they may need in order to find out what's going on that property.
And did we decide that the city of Clawson is going to eat the cost of buying like a dozen of these, or are we going to tack that on to the applicants? The cost.
So in the draft ordinance language, I believe it was going to be onto the city. And what I believe we plan on doing it now is have the city purchase and have some of those. And then when the sign is posted at a specific property, they're liable for any damages or if it gets lost. So I put in a request to company that produces signs to get a couple quotes on options. I'm thinking we'd have anywhere from up to 12 to 15 signs in the office. That way, if we have more than one application at a time, we can spread them throughout town if need be.
And would something like that be put up on the PUD here on Main, even though they haven't come back yet, but
So the way that this works is if there's a scheduled public hearing, so for the application tonight, these signs would have been posted 15 days in advance, like we send out with the notices, indicating there's a public hearing.
Okay.
So it'd be the same thing with PUD. Any item that requires a public hearing would have this posted. So if someone was presenting a site plan that was strictly by right, there wasn't any public hearing, a sign would not be posted. Because there's not
that's only done once. It's not done repeatedly, the public hearing.
Correct. I mean, as many public hearings, I mean, there could be, I know specifically for the ZBA, an applicant may come back a second time and we'd likely just leave the sign up there as long as the application is still open. Once the item is ultimately approved or denied by either board is when that sign would come down.
Okay. Yeah, one other item.
I did have a kind of a follow-up to this, so if you don't mind.
Sure.
The QR code that we have listed there takes you to a new webpage that we've been working on under the building and planning section of the website. And so the way we're currently laying this out is by board and then what the level of application is. And so for the rezoning application, if you went to that link, it would go here. And then you'd have a link to the application and the staff letter separately, and then also the property address in question with the date that it's planned to go in front of the board. And then so as we start getting some more site plans, the intent would have them to be falling under this category and then so on for zoning ordinance amendments or any variance requests as well. And so any plan that we get for active projects being reviewed by Clawson will fall under this category for the public to review as needed. So kind of a 2-for-1 with the public hearing approach. The website is something we've been working on a little bit on the side, and so they kind of ultimately tie in together. So we think this is a good opportunity to share active developments without having people to fumble around to get to the planning commission packets, as sometimes it can be hard to find. So just the development and Clawson webpage will have all that information for everyone.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Nice work on the sign. Looks good. Was you?
I take no credit for that. Like I said, that was Brandon Birch, our communication specialist.
Question, so is there language in that ordinance that specifies like a minimum amount of signs per size of lot? Per se, so like for instance, the Burger King lot, is, 300 feet wide? One sign might get a little lost in 300 foot of frontage.
We did chat about that last meeting when this was discussed,
Yeah.
and I shared that, you know, if it's a corner lot or a larger lot, we'd certainly have more than one, or at least each thoroughfare. That way, if people driving by will see it. And so, again, because we're not putting the responsibility on the applicant, it's on the city to go and place those. We'll be able to have a little bit more oversight of the placement, and we're not going to go hide them behind a tree or a bush or anything. That's the last thing we want to do.
Okay. So you can put multiple though, on the same street?
Yes,
though?
yeah,
Okay.
right. I mean,
So
if-
there's no restriction is what I'm saying.
Exactly, but you don't want to say a requirement of 3 signs, because if you have a variance application for a single-family home, you don't want to have 3 of the same sign out in front of that property.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just, it's, if it's a very large lot and there's language that, specifies one on each, main thoroughfare side, you know, it could be a little lost, one could be. You know,
Yes.
So if we have the flexibility to put multiple, like one every 100 foot per se.
I remember this being one of the main conversation points last meeting, and I don't want to say Joe is going to see how the language work. I know he made one change during the meeting to the ordinance, but we'll be able to discuss that next meeting on July 9th and nail down the ordinance.
Any other questions for Nick? Any other comments about anything anyone wants to bring up? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Motion to adjourn and support. May I have roll call on that, please?
Mr. Scott? Mr. Carpenter?
Yep.
Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Colbert?
Yes.
Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
And Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Oh, I skipped 11, legal update, but we don't have a legal update tonight.
All right.
I hear that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Short.
What's that?